After witnessing my elderly mom in tears over relentless harassment from our tyrannical neighbor, Patricia, I knew it was time to put my considerable resources to use. I was determined to uncover the dark secrets destroying the peace of our once idyllic community. But as my investigation unfolded, it revealed something far more sinister than mere petty rule enforcement. Could Patricia's reign of terror finally be over when she encounters someone who could truly stand up to her? Welcome to my channel. Be sure to subscribe if you're interested in more Karen and HOA stories. The day that changed everything began like any other Sunday morning. I was video chatting with my mom as she proudly showed off her award-winning roses, the same garden as she'd lovingly tended for over 30 years in our peaceful suburban neighborhood. That's when I heard it. The shrill voice of our new neighbor Patricia came through the phone. "Excuse me, but those roses are clearly violating Section 8.2 of the HOA bylaws," she declared, as Mom's hands trembled while she turned the camera. There stood Patricia, in her pressed beige pantsuit, measuring tape in one hand, phone in the other, already taking pictures. I watched, helpless, as Patricia began lecturing my 72-year-old mother about how her cherished roses were half an inch too close to the sidewalk. "I've just been elected HOA president," Patricia announced smugly. "I'm going to restore proper standards to this neighborhood." With a triumphant flourish, she waved her measuring tape like a weapon. "You have 48 hours to move these roses, or you'll be fined $100 a day." I tried to remain calm. "Mom, don't worry. I'll handle the fine," I reassured her. As the CEO of a tech company, I had more than enough resources to pay any fine. I thought simply throwing money at the problem would make it disappear. But in hindsight, I should have realized the warning signs. The roses were just the beginning. Within a week, Patricia found 3 more violations. Mom's vintage mailbox, the one Dad had lovingly installed before he passed, was suddenly considered non-compliant. Her wind chimes, used to track wind direction for gardening, were deemed noise pollution. Even the gnome collection she had nurtured over decades was now labeled as tech lawn ornaments that needed immediate removal. Every morning, Patricia would patrol the neighborhood, ruler and camera in hand, inspecting Mom's property more than any other. The neighbors whispered about how obsessed she seemed with our home, but no one dared to challenge her. They had seen what happened to the Johnsons when they raised concerns. Appeals were mysteriously lost and fines doubled. I was in the middle of a major company merger, constantly flying from meeting to meeting. Each time I landed, another email from Patricia arrived with a new violation. Mom tried to handle it herself, but her arthritis made it difficult to keep up with Patricia's endless demands. She started skipping her beloved gardening club meetings, embarrassed by the mounting violations. The tipping point came when Mom called me, her voice cracking with emotion. Patricia had posted photos of our non-compliant property on the neighborhood Facebook group, calling it an eyesore that was bringing down property values. Seeing my mother's garden, the pride of her life, labeled as a neighborhood disgrace shattered something inside me. What Patricia didn't know was that while she was playing dictator with her measuring tape, I was finalizing the sale of my company. She thought she was dealing with a busy son who could just pay fines to make problems disappear. She had no idea she was provoking a bear with resources not just to fight back, but to dismantle her entire power trip. That night, as I booked a flight home, I received an email from Patricia, a contractor's quote for mandatory landscaping improvements totaling $23,000. She had also attached a list of approved contractors, all charging 3 times the normal rate. I couldn't help but smile as I typed my response. "Dear Mrs. Wheeler, I'll be addressing these concerns in person. See you soon." Little did Patricia know, I wasn't coming home just with a checkbook. I was coming with a plan. And her perfect little power trip was about to be crushed. The next morning, Mom received another certified letter. My heart sank as I watched her hands tremble while she opened it, the 5th notice this month. Patricia, our HOA president, had escalated her campaign. This time, she claimed that Mom's American flag was mounted 2 inches too low, and we had 48 hours to fix it, or face a $500 fine. I helped Mom to her favorite chair and made her some tea, listening as she recounted the incident from the day before. Patricia had. I stood in our driveway, watching Patricia snap pictures of Mom's prized roses and measure the height of each bush with a tape measure. When Mom tried to ask her what she was doing, Patricia fired back, "If you can't keep up with the HOA standards, Maybe it's time to consider downsizing to a retirement home. The next day, flyers appeared in every mailbox about a special HOA meeting to discuss critical property violations, undermining our community's values. She timed it perfectly for when I was supposed to be in Japan, finalizing a major deal, but what she didn't know was that I had been secretly recording everything, documenting her every move. That afternoon, as I helped Mom in her garden, I saw Patricia hosting what looked like a private meeting in her backyard. Mrs. Anderson and Mrs. Thompson from the HOA board were there, along with a few other neighbors. I could hear Patricia's voice cutting through the air. "It's a shame about Eller's house," she said. "My realtor friend says properties like hers could lower our values by 15%. That evening, when I reviewed Mom's security footage, I was furious to see Patricia sneaking onto our property at night. She'd moved Mom's potted plants slightly over the property line, then took photos the next day as evidence of violations. She was deliberately setting us up, but I stayed calm. I needed more proof. The following week, while Patricia was away, I hired a landscaping company to completely overhaul Mom's garden, ensuring it met every HOA rule. I'd memorized their entire handbook. When Patricia came home, she spent nearly an hour in her driveway, measuring and photographing everything, desperately looking for violations that no longer existed. But she wasn't done. She began posting on the neighborhood Facebook group, accusing Mom of having rats near the bird feeder. When neighbors defended Mom, her posts mysteriously vanished. Soon, anonymous complaints about other neighbors started appearing in their mailboxes. I was on a video call with investors when Mom called me, tearful. Patricia had convinced the HOA board to mandate that all homes be repainted within 30 days, with only her brother-in-law's overpriced company approved for the job. Mom's fixed income couldn't absorb another sudden expense. That evening, as I comforted Mom, promising everything would be okay, I noticed something strange through the kitchen window. Patricia was hosting another meeting in her backyard, but this time with strangers. They were passing around papers, pointing at houses on a property map. I couldn't prove anything yet, but I sensed something bigger was happening. I canceled my Japan trip. Mom's house and the whole neighborhood needed me. Patricia thought she could push me around, assuming I'd just keep paying fines to avoid conflict. But she had no idea I was quietly building a case against her. She didn't know that I had the resources to fight back in ways she couldn't even imagine. As I watched her meeting through the window, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an old friend at the county records office. What he found about Patricia's past dealings with the HOA was enough to make my jaw drop. When I walked into Mom's house, my heart sank. There she was, sitting in her favorite chair, her hands trembling as she held a bright red notice. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her beloved garden gnomes were lined up on the dining table like tiny soldiers awaiting exile. Mom whispered through broken sobs, "But my hands just can't cooperate anymore." She showed me her swollen fingers, deformed by arthritis. The notice threatened to place a lien on her house because her shrubs were 2 inches taller than Patricia's arbitrary standards. I sat down with Mom, flipping through months of violation notices. Each one was more ridiculous than the last. The brick border around her flower bed wasn't the right shade of red. Her wind chimes were considered a noise disturbance. Even the bird feeder was labeled an eyesore. As I comforted Mom, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from neighbors. Patricia had gone door to door, PowerPoint in hand, claiming Mom's neglected property was dropping everyone's home values by 15%. She'd even used photoshopped images to make Mom's meticulously cared-for garden look run down. That night, sleep eluded me. I kept thinking about how Patricia had gone after Mom right after I left for my company's biggest deal overseas. The timing was too suspicious. A quick social media search confirmed it. Patricia was closely following my business updates, even commenting on articles about our growth, all while bullying my mother. The next morning, I made a few calls. My company's sale for $89 million had just cleared, but I kept that under wraps. Instead, I hired a professional landscaping team to thoroughly document every inch of Mom's property. They gathered precise measurements, photos, and videos, proving her maintenance was well within the original HOA guidelines. Guidelines Patricia had quietly changed without homeowner approval. But Patricia didn't waste time. By the afternoon, she'd already scheduled an emergency HOA meeting for the following week to discuss immediate action against property violations she claimed were damaging community standards. She even hired security to block Mom from attending, calling her presence disruptive. What Patricia didn't know was that I'd already consulted with 3 law firms specializing in HOA disputes, pulled property records for every house in the neighborhood, and requested all the HOA's financial records for the past 5 years. Most importantly, she had no clue that her well-timed harassment had just sparked a war with someone who had the resources to dig deep, really deep, into her actions as HOA president. I watched through the kitchen window as Patricia walked down the sidewalk, measuring tape in hand, snapping photos of Mom's rose bushes with a self-satisfied grin. She was so focused on documenting minor issues that she didn't notice the private investigator's car across the street, quietly filming her every move. The HOA meeting was in 7 days. Patricia thought she was on the verge of her biggest victory yet, but I suspected those 7 days would reveal exactly why she was so desperate to push my mother out of her home. Something was off about her sudden obsession with this property, and I was going to uncover it, no matter the cost. That night, unable to sleep after seeing Mom cry, I began sifting through every HOA document we had. There was something strange about how Patricia singled out certain neighbors while leaving others alone. The next morning, I called Sarah, an old college friend who was now a top real estate lawyer, and set things into motion. The first red flag appeared when we requested the HOA's financial records. Patricia tried to block us, claiming they were private, but Sarah knew better. Those records were legally required to be accessible to all homeowners. What was Patricia hiding? I hired the best private investigators in town. They quickly uncovered a disturbing connection. Patricia had a special arrangement with her brother-in-law's construction company, Wheeler's Perfect Homes. Every time she found a violation, she forced homeowners to use his company for repairs, charging 3 times the normal price. The more we dug, the worse it got. One elderly couple, the Andersons, lost their retirement savings after Patricia made them replace their entire roof over a single loose shingle. The Garcias had to take out a loan to redo their driveway because the shade of gray wasn't to her liking. Meanwhile, Patricia's best friend, Susan, had a rusty old car parked in her yard for months without any consequences. Then, the investigators found something truly shocking. Patricia had been using HOA funds to take trips to Hawaii, writing checks to herself from the community fund for emergency repairs that never happened. Over 3 years, she'd stolen more than $50,000 from our neighbors. I spent weeks building a case, gathering security footage, bank statements, and sworn affidavits from contractors who'd been coerced into silence. Throughout this, Patricia continued harassing Mom about her garden, oblivious to what was coming. Finally, the breakthrough came. One of Patricia's former assistants contacted me, handing over emails where Patricia bragged about how she was cleaning up the neighborhood by driving out older residents who couldn't afford her ridiculous fines. She specifically targeted people she thought wouldn't fight back. I called an emergency meeting with the HOA board members, excluding Patricia. When they saw the evidence, they were horrified. Many had suspected something was wrong, but had been too afraid to speak up. As we continued to talk, more stories emerged. Patricia had been using HOA meetings to spy on neighbors, plotting her next move based on who seemed vulnerable. The final piece fell into place when we discovered proof that Patricia had altered HOA rules at will, bypassing proper votes and fabricating new regulations whenever she saw fit. She even forged signatures on official papers. I knew we had more than enough to put an end to her reign, but I wanted to ensure she couldn't do this to anyone else. I reached out to local news outlets, preparing to expose everything if the board tried to brush it under the rug. Then, I arranged a meeting with the district attorney's office. This wasn't just poor behavior. This was a crime. As we thought we'd uncovered it all, my team found a troubling link between Patricia and 3 other HOAs in neighboring towns. She'd been advising them on how to deal with difficult residents. How many other communities had she poisoned with her underhanded tactics? The next HOA meeting was just 2 days away, and Patricia was clueless about the storm that was about to hit. As I was gathering my evidence files that evening, Mom called. Patricia was at her door again, waving another violation notice and threatening to put a lien on her house. I grinned, knowing this would be the last time Patricia ever harassed her. What Patricia didn't realize was that the upcoming meeting wouldn't focus on Mom's garden. It would be about her own criminal acts, and I had invited some special guests. the FBI's real estate fraud division. The morning of the meeting felt different. My legal team had prepared 3 massive boxes of evidence, each more damning than the last. As I entered the community center, I saw Patricia seated in her usual spot, her smug smile still in place. She had no idea what was coming. I began by presenting the property maps, revealing that Patricia's beloved rose trellis was actually 6 inches over her property line, a violation for which she'd fined others. The room fell silent. Then, I showed the financial records, 5 years of selective enforcement, waived fees for her friends, and doubled fines for those she disliked. Whispers rippled through the room. But the real bombshell was the security footage showing Patricia accepting cash from Bob's Home Repairs, the only contractor she'd approved for HOA violations. The same contractor who charged triple the usual rate and shared the extra money with her. When the video aired, someone gasped from the back. Patricia tried to interrupt, her face turning crimson. "This is absurd. I've only ever tried to protect our property values." But I wasn't finished. I unveiled letters from elderly residents who had been forced to take out loans to pay her outrageous fines, and medical bills from Mrs. Johnson, who'd fallen trying to clean her gutters after Patricia threatened to place a lien on her house. The room erupted. Neighbors began sharing their own stories. The Christmas lights they'd been ordered to remove, the children's basketball hoops they were forced to take down, the garden beds they had to destroy. Years of suppressed frustration poured out. I laid out my plan. I had already purchased 4 properties in the neighborhood, giving me enough voting power to call for a special election. The law firm I'd hired had drafted new HOA bylaws to prevent future abuse. We would establish a resident review board for all violations, with special protections for elderly and disabled homeowners. Patricia stood up, trembling. "You can't do this. I've been president for 6 years. I know the rules." "That's the problem," I replied coolly. "You knew the rules too well and used them to harm others." Not anymore. The vote was unanimous. Patricia was removed as president. But that wasn't all. The district attorney's office was keenly interested in the evidence of embezzlement and kickbacks we had uncovered. 3 weeks later, Patricia was facing criminal charges. We used the recovered funds to launch a neighborhood assistance program, helping elderly residents with home maintenance. Mom's garden is flourishing now, and her gnomes have multiplied. The new HOA board meets monthly to share cookies and actually assist neighbors. No more harassment. Last week, I saw Patricia loading a moving truck. Her precious white picket fence, the one she'd forced 5 other families to remove, had to come down under the new bylaws. As she drove away, Mom and I sat on the porch swing, sipping lemonade and listening to the sound of her wind chimes. "You know," Mom said, smiling at her garden gnomes, "sometimes the best revenge is just making things right." The next day, we received a call from a reporter. It turned out that similar HOA corruption cases were emerging across the country. Our story had sparked a movement, and now other communities were fighting back as well. Mom's garden gnomes had become a symbol of standing up to HOA bullies everywhere. Sometimes, the greatest changes start with one person saying enough, or, in our case, one retired teacher and her army of gardeners.